to another nation. Them country bad, love them homeland. We'll never give it up to another nation. This a we we da fear. Nobody do it to no Guatemala. Follow me now. This a we da fear. Nobody do it to no Guatemala. This a me name is Pupa. Belize me come from the Belize City area. 110% Belize and proud of it. No, tell me about maritime area. Long time ago agreement by the slave master. Talking about the help and the Belize and dollar because patriots. All people who love them country bad, love them homeland. We'll never give it up to another nation. Them country bad, love them homeland. We'll never give it up to another nation. This a we da fear. Nobody do it to no Guatemala. Follow me now. This a we da fear. Nobody do it to no Guatemala. This a me name is Pupa. Belize me come from the Belize City area. 110% Belize and proud of it. No, tell me about maritime area. Long time ago agreement by the slave master. Talking about the help and the Belize and dollar because patriots. All people who love them country bad, love them homeland. We'll never give it up to another nation. Them country bad, love them homeland. We'll never give it up to another nation. This a we
Alright, sorry. Alright, everyone. 5, 4, 3, 2, talk show in Belize. I'm the producer and host, Sister YaYa Marin Coleman. We're live streaming on local channel XTV, on Facebook and YouTube, XTV Belize. Big show this morning, considering we never have no show last Sunday. Oh no, every Sunday review that big show. Anyways, we have as our co-host, revolutionary from the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, Brother Mutota, and we've never had this before, but thanks to Brother Akko, we have a father and son as guests. But make me introduce Brother Akko. Morning, Brother Akko.
Morning, Sister YaYa. Morning to our guests, Brother Felipe Noguera and Dr. Enrique Noguera. Good morning to our listening audience. Once again, it's a pleasure to be on Sunday Review.
Thanks, Brother Akko. So yes, we're talking all things artificial intelligence this morning. Thanks to Most High. And so we have a father and son with Trinidadian roots. So I want to introduce the elder first, Brother Felipe Noguera. Morning, brother. Welcome to Sunday Review.
Greetings, my sister. Thank you for having us here, for being here. Give thanks to the Creator for all of us, and blessings to our brother Mutota and the support team, and to my son Enrique, and to your listeners. Good to be here.
Give thanks. Brother Felipe wears many hats. He's also a telecommunications consultant and a Pan-Africanist. And then his son, Brother Doc Enrique Noguera. Brother morning, how morning?
Hi, good morning. It's a great pleasure to be here with you today, sister.
This is the brother. I know I tell people, because you know how to show off, but my guests know what they come, right? So I tell people, listen to me. I said this brother that want AI education strategist, and the man got a PhD in AI. Then say you could get PhD in AI. So well, I never noted. I find him, but we are talk about it. So let me ask both Brother Felipe and Brother Doc Enrique for tell we want to leave it both on yourself and whatever you feel comfortable with sharing, so that our listeners, viewers, and people streaming online can have more appreciation of who you are as beings and how honored they right now for have this level of reasoning with we about AI. Brother Felipe, you could go first.
Okay, thank you. You hear me okay? Okay, so yes. I was born in New York, and I'm the son of Trinidadian and Jamaican parents. So I'm a Caribbean man. I've spent my career in Trinidad and Tobago, but working for the Caribbean. My first major substantive post and my opportunity to get to know your beautiful country, Belize, was in 1985 when we started something called the Caribbean Association of National Telecommunication Organizations, or CANTO, of which I had the honor to be Secretary General. And at the time, the reason CANTO was formed was to give an opportunity for Caribbean governments, and by extension Caribbean people, to have greater control of their telecommunications infrastructure and revenue. At the time, Belize Telecom was getting 23% of the revenue from overseas calls, where cable and wireless was getting the balance, 77%. So what we did was to convince the governments to form this association that began to challenge what I call telecolonialism. Telecolonialism is where your telecommunications infrastructure, we are communicating at the behest, at the service of telecommunication, of telecolonialism, because actually no Caribbean company is controlling the infrastructure that allows us to communicate right now. So that's where it starts. So we need to understand that even though we have Belize Telecom and we have all these telecommunications companies, TSTT, for example, in Trinidad and Tobago, which united the external and the internal many years ago, 49% of that company, which is a state enterprise, is owned by the former Cable and Wireless. I say former Cable and Wireless because part of my background is also that I was once the CEO of what's called Flow. Flow was purchased by Cable and Wireless in 2014 thereabouts for $1.5 billion US. 2 years later, Cable and Wireless was purchased by the owners of Flow, what they call the Cable Cowboys, John Malone, Monty Rifkin, et al., for $7.5 billion. So Flow continues under that brand to compete in Trinidad and Tobago as a wireline, wireline meaning cable company, wide broadband services. However, they are also continue to hold on to, as the shareholder of the 49% of TSTT. Now, this is a subject that is taboo to be spoken about in Trinidad and Tobago, to break it down to the public. Because when I asked the editor of The Guardian years ago, I said, why can't we discuss this? He said, you want me to lose my job? So I am raising this question of telecolonialism so that it will alert the people of Belize. You had some very brilliant telecom specialists, Harry Noble, Heriberto Tesukum. These were people who were the foundation members of Canto and BTL in refashioning the relationship between the multinationals and telecolonialists and what we try to do with tele-sovereignty. I won't go into much more detail, but I want you to understand that for us to be able to relate to and appreciate something like artificial intelligence, we must first appreciate who we are as people, what our identity is, and to be able to respect our organic human intelligence, and to recognize that the educational system that we inherited comes out of this same colonial past, and we cannot restrict or limit our education to those schools and those institutions. As George Bernard Shaw once said, the only time my education was ever interrupted was while I was in school. So please continue the conversation in terms of how we understand and how we tackle this challenge of artificial intelligence to jobs and to our way of life. And maybe that's a good segue for Enrique.
Thanks, brother. That really was a good framing. Sankofa, you have to go back for come forward. So that was excellent. Brother Doc Enrique, nobody could tell me about you like you could tell me about yourself. So keep it real and tell me how my PhD, brother, end up at community college, because that's not the norm.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that so much, and it's such a pleasure and an honor to be here with y'all today. I can't start my intro without saluting my motherland, Trinidad. I'm streaming to y'all from New Jersey. I live in the States, in the United States, and I've lived here now most of my life. But I grew up in Trinidad, and I was raised by, of course, my father, who's on here, right, learning about the Moors and all of these revolutionaries, people who walked the earth before I was born, who I felt intimately because of the fact that I had the privilege and the blessing to be born into a household where I had a father who was really educated and would read to us as kids. And I moved to the States when I was 9, and I moved with my mom, and I experienced tremendous culture shock, right? Arriving in Chesapeake, Virginia. I remember the school I arrived in, me, my brother, and my sister arrived all together one day, and the principal of the school announced to the whole audience of students that we were from Trinidad, and as we know, which is in Africa. And my brother, being who he is, happened to point to a map that was in the room, and he actually said that Trinidad is actually in the Caribbean, and here it is. And that's kind of how we began our journey, our talk about culture shock of living in the United States. And then, time passes. I moved to, with my mother. I saw my mother. Basically, she had, both of my parents went to college. My mom had majored in psychology, and with a psychology degree, she didn't really have a lot of experience, right? And so when we all lived with her, what we had to do was she had to go get a job. She worked at 7-Eleven. And I remember seeing her come home late, and one night the 7-Eleven was robbed. And I remember her having a dream that night. She pulled us all together and she said, I had a dream about glasses and we're going to move to New Jersey, which is where my grandmother, who was a retired English teacher at the time, lived. And I remember my grandmother walking me to the library while my mother decided that she was going to go back to school, and she went to a 2-year college, a school called Essex County College, 2-year college, and she ended up getting a degree in optics, which is what helped to pay for the car and move us into the house and so on and so forth. So, and I enjoyed going back to continue to get poured into from my father and from my uncles and my extended family in Trinidad, and but all the while, what it has positioned me to do while I was in college was I began to understand the connection between school and, in some cases, prison. So the school to prison pipeline was my entry point into higher education and learning about using specific test scores at a certain age for 4th grade students to predict how many jail cells there would be, and certain projects and things that I was exposed to through my time as an urban planning major at Rutgers University in New Jersey that helped form my perspective around how can I make an impact in the world. And then I began to tinker a little bit, and really I partnered with a woman who would become my wife, one of my heroes, who's a teacher, now a teacher. She teaches Spanish. She and I ran a college access program for a long time while we finished our degrees. And, I have been at the intersection professionally now of education and technology. We were using geographic information systems, so we were showing kids how to use mapping software, and they were finding relevant projects that they were excited about to share, and they were using the technology to amplify and create maps and tell stories. And never at any point in time was it about the maps or the technology. It was about their experience, and they were using it as a way to be able to share something really rich and powerful with the world. And now, in the work that I do with the 2-year college, a different 2-year college, I am now in a position where I am the lead AI strategist for the college. We have an AI lab at our college because we understand the significance of what's happening in terms of the world of work and how it's evolving. I also oversee enterprise AI at the institution as the chair of the enterprise AI committee. And so I see the needs of the institution versus the needs of the learner. And there's a difference, right? So beyond all the titles, really, I help individuals and organizations go from tinkering with AI, trying things out, to implementing it strategically. So I am absolutely excited to be here as a bridge builder and a brother, to contribute to the conversation. Thank you.
Thanks, brother. Brother Akko, go there with your questioning.
Very interesting. I'm very happy to hear of the history that was shared by both Brother Felipe and Brother Enrique. My question would be, what is AI for the layman? Technology, we know it's a technology, it's a new technology. And there's a tendency when new technologies emerge for it to bring a certain kind of apprehension, and in some instances, fear. And so for the layman, I want to understand what is AI, what is artificial intelligence. So if you can explain that, what it is.
Sure.
Please.
So I'll jump in on this
Yeah.
one. So actually, AI's been around since the 50s.
Since the
Right? And there's
50s.
since 1950s. So its origin stories been around since the 50s. But what we're thinking of, I imagine, Brother Ako, is probably generative AI. What you're talking about, ChatGPT, right? I'm sure many of your listeners have heard of ChatGPT, and maybe some of them have used it. So the interesting thing with ChatGPT is it's really software that's very, very good. Very good software. And what it does is, it's kind of like, a good way to explain it is, let's put it in perspective of Google. When you go on Google, you search Google, and Google is like, if I search, I don't know, Belize television, I might get YouTube videos, I might get articles, I might get all kinds of other things. And then what you have to do with Google is put it in your own context. Meaning, how do I use this information that Google provided with me? How does it add value to my life? That's work. Because you have to think about how I want to use this information now that I did the search. What AI does, generative AI, so ChatGPT and Gemini and those kinds of tools, is it wants to get to know you. It's a technology that is based on context, meaning it knows what you want, in some cases better than you know what you want. That's the goal of it. So that it could take that same request, that query they call it, right, of Belize television, and then put it in the context of saying, okay, Dr. Enrique Noguera, here's how this would relate to you. And the goal is to keep the conversation going. Right? So it's really intelligent software that uses data, which is everywhere around us. Right? It's not just what we type, it's what we say, it's what we see. Right? All around us, to be able to draw conclusions. It's a prediction tool. To draw conclusions on what it thinks you need to keep you engaging and conversing with it.
So this is basically software.
Yes.
Okay, written by, and then how now does this now everybody talks about code, writing code. How does code relate to AI?
Okay. So there's a tool, I'm just going to use the term and I'll explain what it means. Abstraction.
Yeah.
In computer science, abstraction means taking something very complex and making it very simple and putting it in front of a very sleek screen so anybody can use it. Behind ChatGPT and all of these tools is code. Its natural language is code. These systems are communicating in code, but they are translating into English, into Spanish, to be able to engage with a regular user. Right? So what we're seeing in the news around the disruption of computer science is now it's so good at producing its own language of code that what's happening is that the work of the computer scientists is even changing. So they're not writing so much code, they're now reviewing all of the code that it's producing. So the code is basically the language that is used on the back end to create and maintain the system in which it's being able to communicate and make it possible for us through abstraction, if you don't know how to code, so you can now engage with this very complex code-based tool.
I see Brother Felipe has his hand, but let me ask one question. What is the basis of code? Is it mathematical formulas, mathematical theories? Is that what code is?
Code is it is in essence math, right? It's a language, right? That is based on And so we talk about prediction, right? I say it's a prediction tool. It's predicting because it's these algorithms, mathematical equations to determine what you want next, but they're very complex. So the code is being able to figure out what it is that you want next before you may or may not be able to articulate that. So it seems very oracle-like, where it knows things, but it's really just predicting. It's very good at predicting what comes next.
Brother Felipe has a question or a statement to make.
Yeah, and this is where I think it's important for the audience to understand. I was listening to a program on the BBC this morning about the solving of mathematical equations that have eluded mathematicians by AI, and therefore these large language models that he's mentioned, ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini. Now, Enrique was very kind to invite me to take a course on AI with him when he was doing his doctorate, which I appreciated because I said I like to continue to learn. And it was really the application of AI in marketing. And I was actually able to produce a video using AI, an animated video. So what it did for me as an elder, let's put it that way, was to help to demystify the just AI and the coding to how do you prompt, how do you instruct AI to get what you want. In many instances, my experience has shown that if you don't really know what you want, they will give you anything. They will give you anything. It will give you anything if you are not precise. So what Enrique said initially about context is critical. The context that you establish and the continuity of the interaction with the chatbot, the robot that you're dealing with, which is the AI, because it changes. If there's a break, you come up with someone else, and you have to something else. That's not someone, something else, and you have to start afresh. Now, one of the things that I did that I think is an interesting dimension was to engage DeepSeek as well, just to get a different perspective. DeepSeek, as I'm sure you know, is the Chinese version of ChatGPT, their answer to ChatGPT, and it has its strengths and weaknesses. And I really did it to be able to compare the use of the two large language models. And I think for our audience to be able to relate to this conversation in practical terms, because most of us continue to use AI, as you said at the outset, sister, as a search engine. Tell me about this, or tell me about that, or answer this, or answer that. Or the students now are beginning to use it to do their work, their homework, their research papers, and the question of how parents control what their children or grandchildren are doing when they're engaging with these chatbots, how employees, workers, entrepreneurs, business people, and government are going to ensure or engage with these large language models in a way that is not completely disruptive to the human element of society in terms of productive forces. Depends to a great extent on our understanding where you go from prompt engineering, which is how Enrique first introduced me to the concept of prompt, to what he's now describing as manipulating that consistency of information so that it serves rather than controls you.
I would say that the whole AI sector industry within a imperialist, capitalist, white supremacist framework is about profit over people. It's not about people. And so we really need to understand that the people who own and invest in these AI systems not have we best interest at heart. So that's why we need for land so we could defend for we serve our natural environments. Now, one of the big conversations right now, if you could explain to me, I might have to go to a break, what data centers are and the impact it have in a marginalized communities, in a natural environment when it comes to noise, pollution, water, and what the, because every time we go on a device, we need to think about the back end. What it costs to make AI answer we back. So I definitely want, we have 5 minutes before we go to break. So I'm going to drop in on each one, I know, give me a lead minute and a half response to what I just said. I'm going to start off with you, Brother Enrique, then I'm going to Brother Felipe, and then Brother Akko.
Yeah, AI is a seductive tool. And you're absolutely right, sister. I mean, it's designed to be able to get to know you better than you know you because it's designed to be used to gather information. It can be, right? And it primarily is a way for it to gather information about what you like so that it can be used to market and inform what you are then sold, right? And we've seen that with YouTube and all those kinds of things, specific types of ads that are directed to you. Related to the data center piece, I want to share one victory around this. And really, it is a glutton. It is consuming lots of resources and natural water. It is. And there's a cost to the decision to use it. I'm not saying don't use it. I'm just saying it's important, right, to be aware that there's a cost. And so in New Brunswick, New Jersey, which is where Rutgers, where I went to college, is based, they had a victory recently where a group of organizers came together and they met at the council and they refused to let them put a data center in New Brunswick, right? But that took galvanizing a number of different stakeholders across the community to talk about the fact that they did not want that in their backyard. And then they ended up turning that into a park that's open and accessible to the people of the community. But that is the exception, unfortunately, rather than the rule right now. The technology is so lucrative that the data centers now, they're looking at ways to be able to build data centers in space. All of these companies, right? So that's also, I wanted to just add some of that information.
Brother Felipe, I got a minute and a half.
Sure. Google, Palantir, Microsoft, NVIDIA, these companies, check them out. You're right. They're about, and don't talk about SpaceX with Elon Musk and the amount of natural resources that they consume without any consideration. What is a data center anyway? A data center is a series of racks of servers monitoring communications, monitoring data. And it's consuming energy, it's consuming electricity, it's consuming water, it's consuming power, and it is creating waste and contamination, which they have not figured out here how to, in our region, how to deal with. We have a brother who's a Jamaican up in Canada who is developing solar-powered, sustainable data centers. They're smaller, they occupy less space, and they're much less harmful to the environment. It is the responsibility, it's the duty of the policymakers, of the government, if they are working on behalf of the people, and that this needs to happen in CARICOM at the level of the Caribbean Telecommunications Union, which is the government counterpart to Canto, so that the people's interests are protected. What you are articulated is very, very important, but we have to probe even deeper because they're going to say, well, listen, you can't hold back progress. You need these data centers. You need these fiber optic cables to be running. You need the satellites to be transmitting. The question is, how do we ensure that the people's interest, their environment is not strategically harmed, even as we measure the progress that we're making with digitization of our society, IDs, you name it.
Thanks, Brother Akko.
One of the, I'm not sure if Brother Felipe or Brother Enrique made the point, or maybe both of them. The question of context versus content, because we are subjected to content that emerges from a source that have not been very helpful to us in terms of the Eurocentric view of the world, okay? And a lot of the data that is being put into these language models, it is coming from a perspective that is the perspective of the ruling elites of the world, and we know their history with us as people of color and so on and so forth. So from my point of view, the context of AI, how do we contextualize AI relative to people of African descent, people of color across the world? Where are we going to have the same prejudices, the same false information? Let me just, I know we don't have time, but let me just use a black swan moment. For a number of years, it was taught by the Europeans that swans were white. All swans were white. And so that became supposedly a scientific fact until they went to Australia and saw black swans. And then they said, oh, we had a light, but oh, we now have black swans. So this Talib Qasim introduced the term the black swan moment, right? But that theory was based on false information and limited understanding of the world. Is the AI being built based on the same context of a limited understanding, and how would that impact us? Or can we go to
1 second? I'll have to go to break.
Yeah, we'll answer that question.
Definitely, the biases in AI have been documented and exposed to some extent. So we're looking forward to that conversation when we come back. The biases in AI and what therefore besides recognizing these challenges, we need to come up with solutions as everyday people, because only organized people and save the people. We're gonna take a quick break and come right back. Break time.
The Ministry of Infrastructure Development and Housing hereby advises the public of the commencement of works for temporary bridge crossings at 2 locations in Belize City. The first temporary bridge crossing is being constructed near the Belcan Bridge, extending between the Belize Water Services Limited (BWSL) parking lot on the south side and the vacant lot adjacent to the Save You store on the north side. Construction of a second temporary bridge crossing near the Swing Bridge between the Bottom Dollar parking area and Regent Street West is scheduled to commence during the week of May 18, 2026. Works at both locations generally include driving of foundation piles, placement of bridge girders, construction of reinforced concrete deck structures, associated marine and support works. To facilitate construction activities, barges and other marine equipment may be positioned within the Haulover Creek and may remain in place until work is completed. The temporary bridge structures are being constructed to maintain public access and traffic circulation during the planned reconstruction of the Swing Bridge and Belcan Bridge later this year. MIDH advises all mariners and users of the Haulover Creek that active construction zones will be in effect at both locations. As such, all marine vessels are hereby advised that a no-wake zone will be enforced for approximately 200 feet on either side of each construction area. Operators of marine vessels and all users of the Haulover Creek are asked to exercise caution when navigating through work zones, observe all posted signage and safety instructions, reduce speed and comply with no-wake restrictions, remain attentive to construction personnel and equipment, extend courtesy and cooperation with workers on site. The Ministry thanks the public and the maritime community for their patience, understanding, and cooperation as we work to modernize and improve the nation's infrastructure. For further information on the project, please contact the Project Execution Unit at 614-3195.
Every day, we access energy for cooling, lighting, and powering our electrical appliances and devices at work and at home. During cooler months, we rely less on cooling appliances such as fans and air conditioners. However, during warmer months, as the temperature and humidity rises, we use more energy to cool our spaces, and our appliances and electrical devices work harder than they do during the rest of the year. When the months become hotter, let's all practice energy conservation. Here are a few changes that you can make to manage your energy use. Check that all appliances and electrical devices are working efficiently. Turn lights off when not in the room. Unplug chargers, appliances when not in use. Turn off fans and TVs. Use energy-saving light bulbs such as LEDs. And look for the Energy Star products when purchasing appliances and electrical devices. These easy changes can reduce energy use and costs. You can also monitor your energy use during the month by reading your meter and calculating the reading using BEL's bill calculator on our mobile app or by visiting our website. Let's all save energy.
Life moves fast. Your connection should keep up. Need more credit? More data? A flex bundle that fits your lifestyle? With Smart Prepaid, they're a prepaid option for every lifestyle and budget, making it easy to stay connected wherever you are. Because with Smart Prepaid, you can connect on your terms. Purchase credit, data, flex bundles, prepaid plans, and all your favorite prepaid services at any Smart agent, Smart showroom, or simply dial *100# key. No stress, no waiting. Just fast, easy, convenient ways to stay connected every day. Smart Prepaid. Connect on your terms.
The success of my business means a lot to my family, especially my brother, because I'm continuing his legacy, making butterfly art collages. It was very hard for me to receive payments. I had to go directly to meet the person I'm purchasing from and who I'm selling to receive payment. Because I opened my business account with Atlantic Bank, now I can make and receive payments online, and this has made my job much easier.
Atlantic Bank, building the future together.
Now that we have the new water system, it has improved the lives of these people a lot.
The life of my village get better. Now we have our potable water in our house.
الشال شقيل بال بس استخا أقري شديش لقاها أوستيك ما نقليها عن قتيو أم أوستيك وانكوش مان كمادا نشبانكو تو نكوشيك شتاو ألقاها نكاشوك شقوكا نكوشيك شقوكات بس نخوانك أوستيك بياك.
I thanks for the minister to help us for drilling this well and give us the pump.
Right now, I see my village is getting good. I see water system, I see road, and we have our health post there.
We want to say thanks to the government of Belize, thanks to those that were there for Machakila, and we truly appreciate the support that is given.
This Mother's May, celebrate the woman who makes the house feel like home all month long. Great deals like 15% off bathroom and kitchen fixtures from Moen, Hansgrohe, and Duraflow. Plus 15% off Hispasensa tiles, Stormguard windows, and 40% off Sunlight windows. And 15% off Berger paints and huge savings on clearance colors. So come in to Habet and Abet or Brothers Abet, call us or WhatsApp us today and make this Mother's May one to remember. Happy Mother's Day to all marvelous moms.
Nobody do it to no Guatemala. This time me name is Pupa. Belize me come from the Belize City area. 110% Belize and proud of it. Don't tell me about maritime area. Long time ago I been government by the slave master. Talking about the head and the billions and dollar because patriots. All people who love them country bad love them homeland will never give it up to another nation.
All things AI from my father and son duo with Caribbean roots, brother Felipe Noguera and his, well, not only for his son, my son too. Where money, brother Enrique? Call him money. Where money, brother Enrique?
Dr. Enrique Noguera.
All right, a whole lot of PhD guy. Got one bright uncle too over at the USC or UCLA? USC.
My uncle is at US. He's at USC. Yes.
Yes. So, brother Ako, brother Felipe asked for make your ask the question again.
The question I was positing was content and context, because in too many instances we have a situation where we value content and we de-emphasize context. And I was talking, I sort of juxtaposed with the whole theory of the black swan theory, which emerged out of a Talib Qasem, I think the guy is an unexpected event. And it emerged from really the ignorance of Europeans, because they basically had a theory that all swans were white. And so every scientific document or whatever, swans were always white, until they went to Australia and found black swan. And so it was an unexpected moment. Suddenly, it have black swans. So my question relative to AI is this. What is the context in which this AI is being generated? Is it out of the same ignorance and elitism of the Eurocentric idea? And how do we protect ourselves from that kind of context? Because context is very important. The content we know, but the context is very important.
So I have one example that I will share that hopefully will shine some light and give people a level of awareness around this. So one of my entry points into AI technology was this story of a brother named Robert McDaniel, who lived outside of Chicago, Illinois. So Robert, so there was this program that the police department there was running, and it was run by, they're using this language model that was trained on police data, right? Information that had been gathered, who had committed crimes in a specific area based on police information. So they were using this model to predict where crime was going to happen before it happened. So it's called predictive policing. Still happens. So they had this sort of experiment, and they decided to show up, these two officers show up to this guy's house. They knock on his door. His name is Robert. And they're like, Robert, we're here to let you know we're keeping an eye on you. So, of course, they walk into the house, and the neighbors are like, ooh, what's going on? Right? Because they see two officers walk in. And inside the house, they tell them, they said, we have reason to believe that you're going to be involved in a shooting, and we're going to keep an eye out on you. So we'll be around. So, of course, the neighbors see the cops are in the house. They go in, and they walk out. They didn't take him out. So the neighbors start asking questions. And Robert's like, what are you talking about? How could you come to my house and assume that I'm a criminal, or that I'm going to get shot, or I'm going to be the one doing the shooting? So this goes on for a series of weeks. And as the police begin to show up at his job, and what ends up happening is eventually he gets ostracized by the community. The community pushes him away because they think that he is an informant to the police. And of course, he gets confronted and someone shoots him. Right? He lives, but he's a victim of this assumption that he's going to commit a crime. So the reason why I share that story is because the data that was used to predict who was going to commit a crime, who was going to be involved in this shooting, was based on police data. Meaning, if the police spend more time in your neighborhood than in another neighborhood, they're gathering information around what's happening in that context, that environment. So it's drawing conclusions around only if that environment only, or is majority people who are low income people, people who are poor people, people who are of African descent or Latino people, then it's going to predict, right? Because the data pool is only filled with majority Black and Latino people who are low income. It's going to predict that someone who fits that particular profile is going to commit the crime, right? So the challenge that we're in right now is we don't really know, with tools like ChatGPT and Gemini and all these tools, they're trained on the internet, but it's kind of like a black box of data. Now, there are different types of AI tools that we could talk about a little later, but this particular, the main frontier tools are trained on content all across the internet. And who knows, some of it is blog posts, some of it is Reddit posts that are not vetted sources. And so the predictions it's doing is based on those things. The same kind of challenge we run into when we teach history in the United States. And we talk about slavery or enslaved people as, when we speak about this, we're talking about it in certain textbooks as almost a partnership, depending on who's writing the story and how the story came about, or the relationship when Columbus arrived to the Americas, right? And he was, versus if you read Howard Zinn's work and talks about what actually happened, right? That's been documented around genocide. But you don't see those things emerge, even in history textbooks now throughout the United States. We see this. History textbooks are chock full of information where we may get one page about what happened when Columbus arrived and the partnership between him and the indigenous people. Right?
Can I say something?
That information then is churned through in terms of the data that those models are trained on to predict what happens next. Right?
In terms of the predictive and generative AI in Belize, for example, where the social and the demographic situation is very different than in the United States, where the majority of people are of African, indigenous descent, Garifuna descent. It's very important how this applies, and in terms of context. It's very important. First of all, go just for the last point that Enrique made, I would recommend Dr. Eric Williams from Columbus to Castro, and also I would recommend Dr. Tony Martin, The History of the Caribbean. The latter being a much more accessible book that I would strongly recommend for. Of course, Tony Martin is the leading scholar on the Honorable Marcus Garvey. In the context of Belize, I think what the concern about digitization should be. If you look at a movie called Minority Report, starring what's his name, Tom Cruise.
Tom Cruise.
Right? Tom Cruise, Minority Report does this predictive AI. It's based on apprehending criminals before they commit the crime until the system actually turns on him. Right? I don't want to tell you the whole story, but it's an interesting story. What we need to be aware of, Caribbean people of Belize, is the tendency to sell us digitization and smart cities as a panacea for entering the modern age of technology, when in fact it is a form of digital enslavement of I don't know how you believe about the mark of the beast, but once you have implants in you and you can't get your food or you can't get this or that without it, that is where they want to do it. This is the people the same predictive, the companies I mentioned before, Palantir, NVIDIA, Microsoft, Google, this is the direction that they're pushing it. The pushback in terms of how we use these tools so that they can be a benefit to us has to be rooted in our own culture. The context and cannot be rooted in our own culture if we do not know who we are. A people without the knowledge of their history is like a tree without roots. It's like theory without practice, right? So we have to be practicing, as I said at the outset, but we also have to be guided by our ancestors and by what is the state of the art. Who are the people? There were some people that we spoke about off air that I would like you to mention again, so that the listeners who may be interested in doing more research, when Brother Aku spoke about the Black Swan, could then know that there's the Algorithmic Justice League. I wrote that down when you mentioned it, Enrique. Maybe you could elaborate more on that. Because on one hand, you know, people are listening, and it's like listening, it's like watching Minority Report. How does it relate to my life? On the other hand, when you start to see that you can't get a driver's license, you can't get a passport, you can't get a visa unless you do X, Y, and Z, then you begin to see the trade-off of your civil liberties, of things that you took for granted, that we took for granted, that we take for granted as Caribbean people, suddenly being transformed without our permission, without our knowledge, without certainly our consultation. And on the political sense, I want to put out there and finally just to throw, and when we see, I'll put this, if the government cannot educate the people, then the people must develop the capacity to educate themselves, and if necessary, educate and form government. When C.L.R. James, may he rise in power, many years ago, author of the Black Jacobins, great Pan-Africanist from Trinidad and Tobago, came to one, I think, his last visits here, early 90s, late 80s to Trinidad. It was earlier. He gave a speech at OWTU at UE, and he spoke, and I asked him afterwards, I said, well, where do you see the governance and state coming into play? And this is critical when we're dealing with AI. He said, Constituent Assembly. What you're doing, my sister and my brother, whether you appreciate the full implications or not, are laying the seeds for an informed Caribbean constituency, which, even if virtually assembling, has the capacity to influence the outcome of what we're talking about. Back to the Algorithmic Justice League.
Big thanks, Breddah. Before we go to break, I would like to know more about the what is it called? The Algorithmic Justice League, and if there's anything like it in the Caribbean. We're talking about content. We need one of them for the Caribbean, but tell me more about it, brother Doc Enrique.
So I came across the Algorithmic Justice League because of actually Dr. Ruha Benjamin's work. And, you know, Dr. Ruha Benjamin, there's a really important book that I think people should read. Michelle Alexander's New Jim Crow, right? That's related. But that book was my entry point into, in the United States, around the learning about how 1 in 3 black men is going to be incarcerated or in somewhere in the carceral system. That was my entry point into second-class citizenship, right? And why we needed to pay attention. What Dr. Benjamin did was her title is the book that I read initially was Race Before Technology. So that book, in the subtext, is tied to Michelle Alexander's work. What that book did was talk about how predictive police, how AI and technology is being used behind the scenes to perpetuate mass incarceration, among a number of other things. And then I sort of went down the rabbit hole and I discovered a sister named Joy Bolamwini, right? So Ruha Benjamin is at Princeton. She's a professor there. She's in the Africana Studies department. Joy Bolamwini approaches this as a programmer, as a developer, as someone who understands. We're talking about code. She was basically building she was working on a project at MIT, and she took some data, and she was using this data to build a facial recognition app. Meaning, if you put your face in front of the camera, you'd be able to add, or it would be able to recognize you, and just like with like Instagram and these kinds of things, add different things to give you a mask or so on and so forth. But it couldn't see her because she's very melanated. She's dark, right? Dark skinned. And it couldn't see her. And she was like, why? She had a friend who was very fair skinned next to her, and it worked with her, but it didn't work with the sister. And so I highly encourage you. So that's how I discovered the Algorithmic Justice League, and I continued reading. There's another great book called Weapons of Math Destruction by Kathy O'Neill, right, which is where I learned about Michael, the brother I mentioned before, Robert McDaniel. So there's a couple of other resources, and I encourage readers and listeners, please just reach out or Google, right, to be able to find some more information. There's content out there. There's a Netflix series on this, right? So it's important. Algorithmic Justice League represents people who are actively working, scholars who are actively partnering with practitioners to be able to make sure people are aware of the decisions they're making when they choose to engage with advanced technology.
Thanks, brother. Akka, 5 minutes before we go to break.
Yeah,
Your final
I
thoughts
want
on
to
this?
I want to go back to this question of content, because we have had a system in which content has always been skewed. And it begins with Columbus discovered the Caribbean. Okay? You look at the old Westerns, when the indigenous people won a battle, it was a massacre. When the Europeans won, it was a victory. And to me, that is the content we have been fed. And the people who have fed us and believe to some extent it is written in their text and so on. So my concern is, should we have a concern that this erroneous content, this what I call basically false, should we have a concern that these content are going into the model, and then the biases and the falsities that come with this, are they being reproduced in these new technological models?
I think that we should be well aware and conscious, have a critical evaluation of what it is that we're doing. Absolutely. If you are on a free plan, you're not paying for ChatGPT or these kinds of tools, all that data you're putting in there is being used to train that model, train the AI system. Now, on a paid plan, there are certain protections that you have, but you're still operating on the infrastructure. And so, these are decisions you have to make when you want to be more efficient and use the technology to do different things. You have to understand that the content you're providing, the model is learning from you. And in some ways, that's valuable. Sometimes the context, it's extremely valuable for the model to know my positionality at my job, what I might be working on. But sometimes it's extremely problematic, right? Like the example I shared with you about the brother Robert McDaniel. So it depends on it. It's a kind of case by case basis, but going in blind around using the tools and thinking anything you put in there is private is absolutely not the case, right? So we have to be aware of what information we're putting in there, and that critical evaluation of the AI output is a durable skill for anybody going into the world of work and just regular people operating using this technology. We must think twice before we enter specific content into the tools, for sure.
Brother Felipe, we have 2 minutes.
Sorry, I wanted to ask him a question about singularity and the extent to which, and by singularity, where machines are making decisions independent of humans, right? And the extent to which, in the current matrix that he described in AI, there is the opportunity for non-Western, Pan-African, indigenous contributions which skew the processing, the algorithmic processing, in a more balanced way with reality, and not just based on the lies of Cristobal colonialism and the whole myth of European civilization, which Gandhi said would be a nice idea. So I would like to I don't know if you want to take that now or when we come back.
Yeah.
You could speak a little bit about what the singularity is.
Maybe when we come back, I mean, there's some things that I'd like to discuss even before we get to talking about singularity around things that could go awry. But also, I want to have a balanced perspective on some of this, right? Because there's a great cost to not engaging with the technology as well, right? So I want to put that out there as well. And so I don't know, sister, if you want to engage with this now or when we come back.
We'll take a break and then we'll come back. We have 30 minutes. I have a lot we still want to talk about in that 30 minutes. So stay tuned. We have Brother Felipe Noguera, telecommunications consultant, among other things, Pan-Africanist, and Brother Doc Enrique Noguera, AI educational strategist. And of course, Brother Mutota, revolutionary from TNT. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
In May, make Benny's your one-stop shop for appliances. We have Sankey refrigerators, stoves, microwaves, washers and dryers, freezers, smart TVs, and so much more for up to 19% off. Get amazing deals for mom and appliances all May long, and don't forget your B-Bucks whenever you make a purchase to be a part of our Homecation raffle to win $10,000 in December. Benny's, quality and savings.
Life moves fast. Your connection should keep up. Need more credit? More data? A flex bundle that fits your lifestyle? With Smart Prepaid, they're a prepaid option for every lifestyle and budget, making it easy to stay connected wherever you are. Because with Smart Prepaid, you can connect on your terms. Purchase credit, data, flex bundles, prepaid plans, and all your favorite prepaid services at any Smart agent, Smart showroom, or simply dial *100# key. No stress, no waiting. Just fast, easy, convenient ways to stay connected every day. Smart Prepaid. Connect on your terms.
The Ministry of Infrastructure Development and Housing hereby advises the public of the commencement of works for temporary bridge crossings at 2 locations in Belize City. The first temporary bridge crossing is being constructed near the Belcan Bridge, extending between the Belize Water Services Limited (BWSL) parking lot on the south side and the vacant lot adjacent to the Save You store on the north side. Construction of a second temporary bridge crossing near the Swing Bridge between the Bottom Dollar parking area and Regent Street West is scheduled to commence during the week of May 18, 2026. Works at both locations generally include driving of foundation piles, placement of bridge girders, construction of reinforced concrete deck structures, associated marine and support works. To facilitate construction activities, barges and other marine equipment may be positioned within the Hallover Creek and may remain in place until work is completed. The temporary bridge structures are being constructed to maintain public access and traffic circulation during the planned reconstruction of the Swing Bridge and Belcan Bridge later this year. MIDH advises all mariners and users of the Hallover Creek that active construction zones will be in effect at both locations. As such, all marine vessels are hereby advised that a no-wake zone will be enforced for approximately 200 feet on either side of each construction area. Operators of marine vessels and all users of the Hallover Creek are asked to exercise caution when navigating through work zones, observe all posted signage and safety instructions, reduce speed and comply with no-wake restrictions, remain attentive to construction personnel and equipment, extend courtesy and cooperation with workers on site. The Ministry thanks the public and the maritime community for their patience, understanding, and cooperation as we work to modernize and improve the nation's infrastructure. For further information on the project, please contact the Project Execution Unit at 614-3195.
The success of my business means a lot to my family, especially my brother, because I'm continuing his legacy, making butterfly art collages. It was very hard for me to receive payments. I had to go directly to meet the person I'm purchasing from and who I'm selling to receive payment. Because I opened my business account with Atlantic Bank, now I can make and receive payments online, and this has made my job much easier.
Atlantic Bank, building the future together.
Some hands do more than carry. They prepare, they fix, they comfort. They keep a home moving in ways few people notice. And even when the day is done, they are still thinking of home. For the months of May and June, we celebrate the hands that hold the home together, offering you 25% off on tiles, lights, fans, ACs, gardening supplies, and more, both in-store and online. Thank you, moms and dads, from Builders Hardware.
Nobody do it to no Guatemala. This time me name is Pupa. Belize me come from the Belize City area. 110% Belize and proud of it, sir. Don't tell me about maritime area. Long time ago agreement by the slave master. Talking about the head on the Belize and dollar because patriots.
One, welcome back to Sunday Review. It's the speed run. We have a lot to cover. So let's jump right back into it. A number of things that we want to discuss is how important it is for the people to have the knowledge, because we cannot depend on the state, as we have seen consistently, to make the best decision for us as a people. So if you could go ahead and answer the question where I think Brother Akko started, and you're, hi, who is that? Your mom? Your grandma? She had it on TV. Brother Felipe had asked, can you answer, ask the question again, and Brother Felipe, and then Brother Enrique can respond to it, and then we have to move fast to get all these questions in that we want to ask.
Okay, sorry. Well, there's a concern about something called singularity, which is where computers are making their own decisions without human interface, like where they basically are keeping people out. And my question to Enrique in particular is, to what extent is there some kind of ability to have a conscious AI system, a system that is not overly influenced by the values or lack of values of the people who control the companies that I mentioned before, whose interest is much less about humanity and much more about greed and profit?
This is a great question. You know, the singularity conversation around AI sort of like taking over the planet and, you know, Terminator style. There's a lot of things that will happen that can happen before we get to a point like that. That could be extremely problematic. And also some great work that's happening as a result of AI being able to move in that direction. So the goal, you know, like for a company like OpenAI is they're pushing, they say they're in search of like this, not the singularity, they'll call it AGI. So that's general intelligence, meaning it knows in some ways all things across all contexts, right? And then can independently draw conclusions. Now, we're not there yet. And there's a lot of speculation around when we're going to get there. And there's a lot of companies that are heavily investing because it's so lucrative in agents, right? Many of your listeners may be familiar with typing in a prompt and maybe help with an essay or like making a poem. But they're actively, a lot of these companies right now, in particular this year, this is the year of agents, AI agents, that are able to make and draw conclusions independently, right? And then, of course, there's some review that's happening, but we're moving further and further in that direction as these models become more capable. The other thing I want to say, though, the reason why I want to be balanced about this is because there's a cost to not using the technology as well, right? There's a famous saying around being able to, we shouldn't be afraid of AI taking your job. You should be afraid of someone who's using AI taking your job if you're not using it, right? Because there's an advantage. There's a level of efficiency, right? Not everything is doom and gloom when we talk about AI. AI helps solve the protein folding problem, right? Which has resulted in us being able, scientists from all over the world, to be able to get access to information that has helped to create new formulas for medicine and so on and so forth. Now the question is, right, is that for the people? Right? That's a whole separate conversation. The technology itself is something that can be actively used to elevate people and communities. It can. And so something we're talking about during the break is this term, and, you know, forgive the terminology, but you have to know this, RAG, Retrieval Augmented Generation. What that is instead of the black box of data where we don't know where the information is coming from on the web, how ChatGPT was trained, etc. There are systems that can be built where you give it the content, you give it the artifacts, meaning the book or the PDF document, and that information is saved locally, right? It's not in the web and accessible. It's something that you could independently build with a small team and then use it to draw and build for that agenda, whatever the agenda is, right? That's something that access to these tools allows us to do, especially when we're talking about open use of these tools. Like China has a model called Kimi K2 that's extremely capable, right? But that's an open model. You could use that model, download it, and you have access to the model, right? A lot of it, and then you can add content that you want to have it retrieve information from into the model. So there's a lot of, that's not my area of specialization, but I will say that there's work in that area being done all around the world, right? And so being able to have that balanced perspective, I think, is important for the audience to understand that it's not inherently an evil technology. It's just as the powers, if you will, that be, that have control of the technology are using it to fast track an agenda, right? But the same thing could be done for a counter agenda, right? It's still, it is actually possible to do that. You know, now the question is also scale and capital and so on and so forth.
Brother Akko, last question for the morning.
So, but let me just make one statement that Brother Enrique, just to take off that the technology is not evil. No technology is evil. Technology is always utilitarian. Religion and people who have certain kinds of philosophical agendas have skewed these things and scared people. Because if you look at Industrial Revolution, before machines came, people did this work manually, a lot of work manually. Then machines came and it transformed work. But what happened is that some of the former workers were trained to operate the machines. Some of the former workers who were displaced from the manual labor were trained to operate the machines. Some were also to operate, and some were trained to repair the machines. So there was not the fear that people would lose their job and their economic opportunities. There's a lot of debate now about AI displacing humans, right? And that has concerns because it's saying, look, so many workers would do this and then AIs could do this and displace workers. And it doesn't seem that there is a perspective as to how these workers could fit into this new world. And the last thing is another, there's another thing I read recently. It's called The Last Economy. And it was written by this guy called Imad Mostak, right? And he has a suggestion, and I just want to get your comment on it, is that the way to control AI, to make it more friendly to humanity, is that AI becomes a utility like electricity and we all own it. Okay, it's an interesting perspective. So here you have one perspective in which people are saying, look, this is displacing people. My view is that technology is not evil, it is utilitarian. Like a knife could cut fruit, it could kill people, it's not a knife. And that's how I see AI. Okay? So you have that view, and then you have this guy's view that, look, let us own it, let us nationalize the thing and make it like electricity. So we own the electricity company or we own the water company. So those are the two sort of, if you want to call it, question statements I wanted to respond to.
All right, you can both answer them quickly because time is going, and I know there's a position Brother Enrique wants to share with us, and I also want to talk about AI pedagogical literacy. You can't go without talking about it, brother. Think I don't pay attention. Go ahead, you answer, and then Brother Felipe answer Brother Akko.
Daddy, you want to jump in on this one?
Yeah, let me get first, and you can answer. Yeah. The knife in the hand of a surgeon or a thief, it's something like that. But I think it's also that that we have a duty to understand it as much as we can as it's unfolding. We can't simply let it go by and think it's going to go away. It's not. It's here to stay. And the question is, and I think what has been very useful about this conversation is how do we get to a position of understanding so that we can use it beneficially for the community, for the society, for the environment, when we know that the people who currently control it have a much more nefarious nature and tendency and track record. And it's not an easy path forward, particularly when we have some neo-colonial compradors who are prepared now to privatize electricity. That's what I wanted to say, and you know what I'm talking about, Brother Mutota. So there's what was once considered a public utility is now, look, hey, it's up for grabs to the highest bidder. So we have to deal with that mentality even among our own misleaders, which is why the population has a responsibility to become more conscious, more educated, and therefore more empowered. I'll turn over to Enrique.
You know, I echo a lot of what was said around this. You know, the decision to be able to use the technology we must be conscious of, but it's not just AI. How many of you have a cell phone? Where did the battery come from in that cell phone? How does the cell phone run? That technology comes from, right, the cobalt in the ground of the DRC, Democratic Republic of the Congo. There's women and children, and they're using their hands to pull out this cobalt from the ground, and then that is being sent out and used as a way for us to be able to have the latest smartphone device. So it's not just an AI conversation, right? Data centers have existed before. AI is just so consuming, right? Because where does your information go when it goes to the quote unquote cloud, right? It's not like this is new. This has been around. It's now becoming a lot more in the news because there's just so much more demand. And it's so, it's something that we have to be conscious of. We have to be aware. You know, I really urge us to be critical and aware of the decisions we're making, not just with AI, but all the decisions we're making. When we get in a car and drive instead of walking, the kind of impact that then has on the environment. And these are all decisions that we make consciously. But what's the cost of not driving? There's a cost. Right? And so these are related and different at the same time, but I want to put that as part of the conversation. So this is not a new challenge that we're facing. Right? We've been using this technology for a long time, and these things have been at play for quite a while, and now they're coming back to the forefront. Right? So I just want to make sure to add that.
Please tell us quickly about AI pedagogical literacy, and then the information you want to share with us before we leave.
Yeah, thank you so very much. AI pedagogical literacy came out of my dissertation. So the dissertation is the huge paper that I wrote when I became Dr. Enrique Noguera. I was, actively thinking about what I wanted to write about when I made my initial mark on the scholarly world, and I had done a study looking at how people felt around AI in the classroom. That was my study. It was a qualitative study. And then from that decision among community college faculty members, and from that decision, and from the work and the research that I had done to put the dissertation together, I built something called AI pedagogical literacy, which is, as I said, research-based. But what this means is we look at the impact of AI in school and learning. And if we go back to the learning sciences, we realize that it is important, it is essential for us to struggle mentally to learn. You have to struggle to learn. That's like me going to the gym, bringing my friend, watching him lift all the weights and expecting to build all of these muscles. It's not going to happen. The way the brain works is you have to struggle. And so cognitive load and all of those things are woven into what AI pedagogical literacy is. Meaning, we know that the world of work is changing. And in the community college space, just like students who are in primary all the way up until they finish their education, we're in a situation where they're going to go into a world and AI is going to be all around them. It's already around them, but it's also shaping the world of work. So what it does, AI pedagogical literacy is about looking at what the learner needs to learn from a learning sciences perspective, and then adding AI together with that, so that we're in a position where we are preparing students to be able to intelligently and responsibly engage with AI technology, so that they're not all of a sudden in the job trying to figure things out. But beyond that point, AI can be a very effective thought partner, meaning I could have conversation with it and it can help me develop my ideas. But how we do that matters tremendously. Where it looks like I know all of these things because the AI produced it, but the truth of the matter is, what is it that we need to hold true to as educators, as people who value education? We still must be able to read and critically think now more than ever. With AI being able to produce all this content, there are some durable skills. One of those skills is metacognitive awareness. That means, do I really know what I think I know? And what do I do when I know I don't know what I know? The second one is critical evaluation of AI output. When AI is producing all this content, it could generate, a tool like Perplexity could generate a 48-page research document in 2 minutes. How are you going to critically evaluate and make sure that it's not just what they call hallucinating or lying? Right? Because anything you put out into the world, even if you used AI to generate it, you are accountable for the information. And so we have to, as a people, think about what is it that we want to fight for. And we want to fight for the ability for our kids to read independently, like whole books, and enjoy those things, to sit together and converse. And so AI Pedal is about bringing those two worlds together and using that technology to enhance and elevate learning from a cognitive science standpoint.
Thanks. Okay, final thoughts, starting off with you, Brother Felipe.
Well, first, thank you very much for the invitation, Brother Aku and Sister YaYa, and for selecting the topic. I want to thank Enrique also for making the time, taking the time from his family. He's very busy. And I wanted to let you know that what he's saying is true. It's not just that I was exposed to it. We actually I'm collaborating with Enrique and another son of mine, Felipe, on the publication of a book called The Adventures of Misty, Rincon Mountain Terrier. And AI has been, although I wrote the book, Enrique has been very good at editing it. He introduced the story now being narrated by a cat. And if you know anything about Trinidad, the north coast of Trinidad, Blanche shares Rincon. So it gives an opportunity. The story tells, about the folklore as through the adventures of this dog. And then Enrique's brother, who has been using different tools like Photoshop to address images, for example, pushes the technology to its limit. One of the challenges that, for those of you who are interested in image production, for example, ChatGPT has difficulty with consistency. Gemini, so these are some of the things that when you actually begin to engage with the technology, you see both its strengths and its weaknesses. And that, when he says you have to challenge and question it, if it just gives you some information and you don't cross-reference that information, you could be presenting false information. So don't get lazy. And you say, okay, I just go to ChatGPT and it'll do my paper for me, or it'll solve my problem for me. It does not solve problems unless you are very, very specific with how you frame the question or how you frame the problem in order for it to be solved. And that's my experience. And again, thank you very much for having.
Thanks, brother.
Appreciate it. Much love.
Thanks, brother Enrique.
Yeah. So. Listen, we're here to build bridges. You should have a balanced perspective when you're using this technology. There are tremendous dark sides of using it, and there are tremendous upsides. But it really comes back to human intelligence and connection. Those are essential, now more than ever. But one quick note is for any of the educators or consultants or trainers listening, someone who has some kind of intellectual property that they want to share to the world. I'm running a program with a friend of mine, a colleague of mine named Chris Mokibi, who's been able to get his followership. He's a teacher based in the U.S. His followership from 0 to 51,000 followers on Instagram in a matter of just over 6 months. And there's a specific workflow that he is training on, and I'm helping him to recruit. I'm going to be sitting in on these classes. It's called IP Engine. And so it's for people who want to package market and monetize their expertise with AI. We're bringing in only 9 people though, and we're going to sponsor a seat. So if this sounds like you might be remotely interested in it, please reach out to me. Find me at enriquespeaks.com. If you search my name, you'll be able to find my website, my LinkedIn, and all of those kinds of things. We're here to be able to bridge build, to bring people along so that we're not just concerned and fearful of AI as a technology, but we're able to critically engage with it. So I think that's really important to share with the.
Thanks, brother. Is there a deadline?
So great question. So we're going to actually start at the end of June. The deadline is ASAP. So find me ASAP, right? Especially for that sponsored spot. Really, it's going to run from June 19th to August 7th. It's only 8 sessions, right? So it's 8 weeks, but really it's just 90 minutes on a Friday, right? And I don't want to put the time out. The time in terms of Eastern Standard Time, or Eastern Time, is 2:30 p.m. And so that would be, I imagine, 12:30 p.m. your time.
I'm going to follow up with you on that to get more information. If there was a flyer, it would make things a lot easier for me to share it in my network. Big thanks to both of you. Yes, we are definitely having a back. There's no doubt about it. And we want to get some of them powerful sisters. You got a link, Brother Doc. We have to get some of them sisters in the region and to a wider audience for sure. Brother,
will we be able to get a copy of the recording, Sister? Yeah, sorry to
Yes, I already sent it to you. Check your WhatsApp.
Okay,
Brother, your final thoughts.
Thank you very much.
Sister YaYa, I want to return to context. That this technology is evolving or being developed in the context of a capitalist economic system with all its consequences. And from what we know of the last 500 years of capitalism, every technology that has emerged, rather than it has served utilitarian purposes, has been used for accumulation, violence, and oppression. And I think in the context of AI, we have to keep in mind that we still have and still live in a capitalist economic system. One of the points that the Ahmad Mostak makes is that we have to change the economic system. We have to change the social system in order for us to not make the mistakes of the past. So that's what I would say. Contextually, we have to understand we are still living in a capitalist economic system.
Mute your mic, Brother Felipe. Thanks, Brother Akko. This has been such a rich conversation. Big thanks to Brother Akko for making the link and for Tuono take the time for come contact to we this morning or this afternoon, depending upon part of the day. We ask that you, Brother Enrique, I want to send you a text because I don't have your WhatsApp number and I need your WhatsApp number, but I want to link up our email. But I already sent the link to you, Brother Felipe. You can share with other people.
How did you send it? I was looking. How did you send it?
I sent it on WhatsApp.
Okay, all right, I'll take it.
And then somebody did share a comment who is listening to us. Let me share that comment quickly. The person said, excellent conversation and discussion on AI technology. Both guests are sharing complex matters in grassroots language and terms. It can't get better than that, because we want to make sure for we listeners, viewers, and streamers could connect with what we share and what we talk about on most Sunday mornings. This show, thanks for that. This show will repeat at 5:30 Belize time. You could go to XTV Belize on Facebook or YouTube and listen at your convenience. Share the link. Remember, you could go to Enrique Speaks. Is it .com? EnriqueSpeaks.com.
Yes, it is. EnriqueSpeaks.com.
Thanks, brother. We really appreciate your authenticity. We don't forget where to come from. We want to get additional knowledge and want to connect with communities all the time for collective liberation. Big thanks again, Brother Felipe Noguera, Brother Doc Enrique Noguera, co-host, revolutionary Brother Akko Mutota. That a link, you know. That a link. It's a humble brother, but I want to big up every time because they deserve it. And so we'll be here next Sunday. Until then, remember, Only organized people will save the
will
people.
save the people. Thank you.
Thanks. Make I get a picture of this phone number before. Good, I got it.
Tell me about maritime area. Long time ago, agreement by the slave master. Talking about the head and the billies and dollar. To know Guatemala. This time we have the nobody do it to know Guatemala. This time my name is Papa. Believe me, come